In this one, I focus strictly on 10 baggers, the mining stocks, gold and silver miners that I believe have a 10x potential, that they could actually add a zero to your investment.
Welcome to Wealthion. I'm Wealthion founder Adam Taggart. Just doing a quick follow-up here with precious metals analyst Jeff Clark. If you watched the video that Jeff and I recorded 3 weeks ago, we talked about how the precious metals mining complex was just crazily undervalued relative to most other financial assets today, and certainly versus history. If you haven't watched that video, you can click the link above to watch it. Jeff does a great job explaining why on a fundamentals basis these assets are just going, in his words, for dirt cheap prices right now. Well, I've asked Jeff to come on very briefly today because he and I were just at the New Orleans Investment Conference last week, and I watched Jeff give a fresh presentation where he walked through a number of precious metals mining companies that he thinks have particularly interesting prospects ahead of them. These are a little bit more on the speculative side than is normal fare. But Jeff, I just wanted to invite you on to let folks know kind of the context of the presentation that you gave, and then I want to let folks know how they can watch that presentation if they're interested.
Yes, great. Thanks, Adam. It's great to be back with you. And it was a lot of fun at that conference, I have to say. I really enjoyed being there in person, not just because of COVID and wanting to get out, but just being around like-minded people. And of course, it was an investment conference, right? So we got a lot of input on different ways that could be profitable to invest over the coming years. The main theme that I got out of that, I don't know about you, was the Fed is trapped. I mean, I think I heard that from a lot of speakers. You're right. I don't know how they're going to get out of this. I think you brought this up as well. They're really in a tight spot. And that implies that there's going to be some tumultuous time ahead. There could probably be some type of crisis or something like that. So, and of course, gold and silver will probably benefit very well from that. There'll be a wonderful hedge in that kind of environment. But that was my take. That's what I got out of the conference. That was the main theme. What do you think?
Oh, well, very much. And, it's great about a conference like that. As you said, Jeff, it's not just meeting, like-minded investors there and the great conversations that come out of that, but it's actually meeting a lot of the other experts, many of which that I get a chance to talk to on this program. But I get a lot less opportunity to mingle with in real life, certainly, with COVID for the past 2 years. So it was really nice to actually get to spend some really quality time with folks like Danielle DiMartino Booth and Jim Rickards and Jim Grant. Jeff, I know you got to hang out a little bit with Ron Paul there, but it's people of that caliber. And you're right. I think that the vast consensus was that the Fed is stuck, many would say, in a trap of its own making, and that many see a lot more volatility ahead. I would say that I think most people think kind of the long arc of where things are headed is maybe actually more predictable now than it's been in years past, that really inflation is going to be the way in which the story unfolds. But, and you alluded to this just a minute ago, it's not going to be a straight line, and things are going to get pretty rocky, and we're going to have periods that could get really punctuated with big and potentially violent price corrections. That was one of the things that, related to the Fed. Folks were saying, look, the Fed really can't continue to ease here, can't continue to push stimulus into the system because inflation is now spiking so much that it's creating both economic and social blowback. But of course, the Fed can't really tighten at all now, given how over-leveraged the current environment is, or it's just going to crash the whole system. So kind of both paths lead to crisis here. And of course, precious metals tend to be a great crisis hedge. So, they're kind of doubly attractive right now, both from a crisis hedge standpoint and, if for some reason prices continue going higher, they are one of the most undervalued asset classes right now, and they may play catch up the way in which a lot of the other current commodities have done over the past year. So Jeff, I want to get to your presentation now. You did a presentation on the precious metals mining companies that you think are, don't let me put words in your mouth, but it seemed to me that they're the ones that you think are most interesting right now for people that have the ability and the iron stomach to speculate with. I get a sense that these are not widow and orphan funds, investments, or stocks that you're talking about. You're really talking for almost kind of gambling money, because again, the mining sector is highly volatile, highly speculative, as we've talked about in the past. But the reason why I like to cover it on this show is, A, it is undervalued. It's one of the very few undervalued asset classes right now. And it doesn't happen very often, but when the precious metals mining sector comes into favor, you can have just ridiculous, like stratospheric returns in some of these companies that do very well to the upside. So can you just give a little bit of context as to why you put this presentation together and what it covers?
Well, it's first of all, it was about why we've been here before, that we've seen this movie before, meaning gold and silver have been here before. And I talked about this in other interviews and even the last conference I was at, that here we have a falling gold and silver price, and yet we're surrounded by catalysts. Why aren't they going up? And we've seen that exact scenario before, back in the mid 70s. Gold and silver fell both over 40% over an 18-month period of time. And yet they were surrounded by catalysts just like today. And so it's very similar. And my thesis there at the first part of my talk was, hey, we've been here before. The catalysts are simply building steam, and the spring is coiling tighter, you could say. So my message first was, don't give up on gold and silver, because we're building steam here, and eventually when this thing bursts, whatever that is, the economy, the markets, the monetary system, something else, a black swan, then gold and silver will respond to that. And I think that's what's ahead. And then the second part of my talk, the bulk of the talk, was mostly about stock picks, but this one was a little different. In this one, I focused strictly on 10 baggers, the mining stocks, gold and silver miners that I believe have a 10x potential, that they could actually add a zero to your investment. So this talk was not for those who want to buy producers or, pardon me, royalty companies or developers or things like this. That it is strictly about speculative opportunities, mostly with explorers, that I believe have the potential to go 10x. So, and believe it or not, I actually have two in there that I think could go 20x. So in the midst of a falling gold and silver price, I actually had the audacity to say, here's a couple that could actually do 20x. So, but when this thing turns, that's the kind of thing that can happen. And I actually give a number of examples in my talk of mining stocks that have gone not just 10x and 20x, but 30, 40, and 50x before. So there's plenty of history on this. So when the markets do turn, I think this group of stocks that I recommended here could have that kind of potential. But just one caution, Adam, like you said, these are speculative. These are more speculative than the average miner. And so I strongly urge everyone, if you decide when you watch this video that you want to invest in them, that you take a basket approach and don't just get excited about one and buy just one, because I can't tell you for certain, which ones are actually going to do this 10 or 20x. So make a basket out of it, make your own little ETF or fund, if you will. But I think I'm excited about them. And these are stocks I personally own, some of which you could even get a better price than me on right now. So I think the potential is definitely there. And I go through each one of them and why I see the potential with them in this video.
Yeah, and it is a great presentation. I mean, you go through with each company and not just talk about the rationale for why you're interested, but you go through recent drilling results and, a lot of data that you have available to you when you're actually making your assessment. All right. Well, look, I think folks probably want us to stop talking and just tell them how they can watch this presentation. And I will say, Jeff, I was there, like I said, in New Orleans. I was there at your workshop when you presented this. It was packed. It was standing room only. Got wonderful reception from the folks that are there who are big time precious metals fans. So for folks that are just learning about the space here, you're in for a real treat. You can get this presentation by going to wealthion.com/Clark, CLARK, and you can watch it there for free right now. I'll just underscore that, again, just so we can be, our consciences can be clear. This is the highly speculative end of a very speculative, high-risk industry. So proceed with caution. Only play with money that you can really afford to lose with these type of picks that Jeff is mentioning here. And I'll say, in addition to the diversified approach of building your own basket here, I would say that if unless you are a really experienced investor with individual mining stocks like this, unless you already have a couple years of experience, I highly recommend, if you take any actions based off of this presentation, that you do so following the guidance of an experienced professional financial advisor who has a lot of experience investing in mining stocks. If you've got a good one, great, stick with them. But as you folks who watch this channel know, we have an endorsed advisor who we tell people to work with for all sorts of reasons, but they're very well experienced here in the mining sector. They also know how to hedge positions so they can reduce your downside risk in this highly volatile space. If you want to talk to them, and you can do so for free, there's no strings attached, no cost, there's no expectation or obligation to work with them. Just go to wealthion.com, fill out the short form there, and you can have a free conversation with them about investing in these stocks if you want to. All right, with that caveat out of the way, Jeff, thanks so much again for coming on here and giving us the brief context. Thanks for putting in all the time in this presentation, folks. It's a pretty meaty one that Jeff just recorded here for us. And Jeff, look forward to having you on the program again, tracking this sector for us as we see what it does next. Hopefully it follows the way that you think it will, but whatever it's going to be, it's going to be volatile, and so we'll want to have you back making sense of it for us.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to, and I enjoyed recording this just for your Wealthion audience. It was fun, and I really believe in this thesis, and because I do, that's why I've been buying miners. So there could be, if we're right, there could be some very exciting days ahead.
Great. Well, that'll be fun to cover. All right, folks, if you like seeing these types of presentations, big experts like Jeff here on the program, do us a favor, support this channel so we can reach more viewers by hitting the like button and then hitting the subscribe button below, as well as that little bell icon right next to it. And then once you've done that, go to wealthion.com/Clark and watch this great presentations of Jeff. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thanks, Adam. See you next time.